which ID camps of the companies should you or should you not go to? So I want to break this down a little bit further to go. We have something called company-led ID camps. For example, Future 500 or Exact. Those are led by companies. Then you have large ID camps led by schools. There's a school ID camp I recommend called the Harvard Clinic, which has all the top academic Division IIIs and Harvard. That's held by a school, but multiple schools are going. There's a lot of schools like that, to be honest, in this process, and a lot of ID camps in that world. There's another one called Elite Academics Camp. I can put that link stuff below, and that's specifically for schools with high academics. There's a PPA camp that's held by a school, but it does have a company name because one of the coaches runs it pretty much every year. And yes, these coaches do this to make money. Okay, coaches make if you're an assistant coach, you're making $30,000 to $40,000 a year. And if you talk to your parents, or parents are listening, you know that's not enough to support a family. So they all coach club soccer in addition to, which makes their schedules insane. Now they're coaching college, they're coaching club. It's just insane time-wise. Like it's crazy. Then head coaches at the D3 level make $30,000 to $40,000. And if you're a head coach at D1 level, maybe you make 60 to 80. But if you're, at the UCLA's, then you maybe make 120 to somewhere in there, maybe 140. But you're not becoming a millionaire. Other sports, you can become a millionaire. So the point is this, they have ID camps. ID camps are so that way they can pay their coaches, so they can pay a volunteer assistant coach who's doing it for no money. So maybe they could even give some of their players money during an ID camp because they're working. So ID camps is to fund the college soccer team. So, and it's so that way they can get you guys more balls or gear. And the school helps, of course, but camps are there to make money. Now, should you pick an ID camp with a company, Exact, Future 500, or a big one where there's multiple schools? And there's one more option, which is schools that are just one school there, or maybe two or three schools, and it's just held by a school. So you've got companies, we'll call them companies, big ID camps hosted by schools, and individual ID camps where there's just one school and that school alone. So here's my order of rank. If you want 100% to be sure you get seen, get a genuine invite first. That's number one. Number two is pick the individual school's ID camp. There's going to be less kids. There's only one school there, and they're going to watch you. So that's like a guarantee. So let's say your favorite school is Claremont, which is a top Division III school in California. You want to get seen by their coaches, go to their ID camp. That's the best way to do it. So, and it gets filled up fast. They limit those to 30, 40 kids. So you want to sign up quick. All right, that's that example. Then let's say you have Exact or Future 500. Here's my recommendation with those. If you're a freshman or a sophomore, I really like those camps for you. First of all, there's a lot of Division III schools there, and you can already start the recruiting process in a really meaningful way with those schools. So I love it for you guys. Also, if a coach says, hey, I really liked you, I want to monitor you, they've got 2 or 3 years to monitor you. So it was really worth it. On top of that, the Division I schools are also there, and you as a young kid don't know what school you want yet or what school you might go to. I had never heard of Valparaiso. I grew up in Malibu, California, like a very affluent place, and my parents worked their tails off so I could go to ID camps and whatnot. And I ended up in Valpo, Indiana. Okay, that's the middle of nowhere, and it was literally like one of the coldest places in the country at one point when I was there. It's got lake effect snow. It was freezing. The point is, I didn't know where I wanted to go to school, and I was willing to go to play college soccer anywhere in my case. So, similarly, you want to go to those big ID camps because there's a lot of schools there. Will introduce you to new schools. You can start a relationship with these coaches. It's awesome for freshmen and sophomore. On top of the fact that if you're an elite level player as a freshman or a sophomore and you get noticed, the Division I schools will start recruiting you, not secretly per se, but you'll still send them video. You'll have a relationship started. You'll know their face. You're going to go to another ID camp in the future. So that's great. If you're not quite the level for college soccer, you think, like say you're a lower level player, going to those camps is a great way to get exposure. Coaches will judge you, right? They'll be like, you're not ready for us. But at the same time, they're not going to say, we'll never recruit you. They're going to say, you're young. You're only 14 or 15. You have a couple more years to develop. Why don't you go work on these things? And right now, you're not going to play college soccer unless you go do XYZ. Better you learn as a freshman or a sophomore than as a junior. So then, if you're a junior, the only time I would recommend Future 500 or Exact is if you've got a genuine invitation from the schools that are going there before the ID camp. So if there's 5 schools there that you really, really like, and you've messaged them all, and none of them have gotten back to you, you could still go. But most of the time when you go to these large ID camps, the coaches say to you, it was really good to see you. We didn't get to see enough of you. We'd like you to invite you to our own individual ID camp. And then you're like, you want to give them the middle finger and be like, what the heck? Why did I come to this big one if you're just going to tell me to come to yours? But what if you get 4 or 5 genuine invites to an individual ID camp from a big ID camp? Then you might say, well, that was kind of worth it because I got a bunch of genuine invites. But then you're like, they're going to take my money and I can't go to all these. So frustrating. So that's why I want you to do the heavy lifting before. Now, if you do get 4 to 5 schools interested in you, and they're all at exact, like we have one student who's interested in Carnegie Mellon and Claremont, and they're both going to be at exact, and they both said we want to see him, and he can't go to their individual camps because the dates don't work. Perfect. Exact is great. Both schools are there. There's some other schools there that are bonuses. He knows those schools are going to watch him specifically. Totally worth it. Okay. The same thing applies for what we'll call the ID camps hosted by a school, but with many schools attending. The same thing applies, except those are better ID camps, traditionally speaking. Those schools don't usually say, oh, we need to see you one more time at our individual ID camp. They've seen enough of you. Like, for example, Dartmouth hosts a camp, and usually like a Bowdoin and a Bates and a Colby and a Keene will show up as well. And if you do well at that ID camp, the smaller schools, Colby, Keene, those types of schools will be like, we really liked you. Like, we want to know more about you. Now, Dartmouth, though, which is the D1 school and probably the reason you went, they're going to need to see you in a showcase still. They're going to be like, it was great to see you up close in person. We can't make a decision on you until we see you in a more competitive environment. We're going to need to see you again. And that's just the deal with almost 98% of Division I schools. An ID camp alone is not going to get you recruited. And I know you don't like hearing that, but that is the reality. So now you've got your exact Future 500, your camps hosted by a school, but with multiple schools attending. Those are my favorites for you to go to. There's one coming up called the Harvard Clinic. That one is just awesome. It'll be almost every summer, depending on when you're watching this video. It's a really great one. And I can put the link below, but they change it every year, so it might be expired by the time you see the video. But the point is, that's a great camp. Then the last one are the individual camps. If you're like, this is my dream school, I want to go to this school, go to the camp, okay? Even if it's unrealistic. You want to play UCSB, for example. UCSB don't need ID camps to recruit kids. Now, they still do. I'm not saying they don't, but they don't need it. They're not desperate for it. Division III schools need ID camps. They don't have ID camps. They don't recruit kids. They have to use ID camps. So they are really going to recruit kids. Same with Division II schools as well. They need ID camps. So because they cannot go to all the events that some Division I schools can go to. So Division I schools, though, they can go to showcase. They can have you come to 5 ID camps. There's 50 kids that all want to play at their school that are all very good. So they can kind of pick the cream of the crop, which is what your goal is, of course. But helps you so much if you get started earlier. It's just, I can't tell you enough. And, of course, you have to be a good soccer player. Now, what about the notion of if you're good, you're going to get noticed? And I really hope you're watching to the end of this video, because sometimes parents get on the call with me and they go, well, if my kid was really good enough, the schools would come and speak to them. That is not how the recruiting process works. And frankly, if that's you as a parent, don't call me, because if that's the attitude, then it's going to be a very difficult college recruiting process for you, because just being good enough is just a tiny part of it. GPA, your budget, timing, right position. You need to get into their face. It's the exact same as a job interview. Okay, so you're a really, really good engineer. There's a million good engineers. You have to get an internship, so that way you know the boss, so then the boss likes you, so then the boss hires you instead of somebody else. It's the same thing. There was a coach's interview the other day that I watched where this coach, a top Division I school, asked the student on the Zoom call when they were one-on-one and said, who would you like to have at your, if you could have anyone to dinner, who would you have? And the girl says, I like my math teacher. And the coach was like, I love their honesty. So I recruited that person instead of somebody else. Was it soccer at that point? No, it was human. So you have to really get yourself in front of them. Okay. Now, in your individual ID camp that you've got there, that you're going to be going to, make sure you email them before the ID camp. Okay, that would be much better. You have a much better chance. But the bottom line is, if it's your favorite school, go. Because you never know, soccer's subjective, plus you'll get a lot of good feedback. Remember, you're going to ask them what level you can play after the camp. You'll follow up with another email, with the follow-up email, etc. If you go to that ID camp that's an individual one, and you don't hear back, don't get too upset. You're not going to hear back usually the day of. It'll maybe take a week, and you're going to have to follow up with an email to get more information out of them. Now, if they ask you, this is true for all the ID camps, if they ask you any questions at the ID camp, what's your name? What year are you playing? What's your GPA? It means they like you, okay? So it's a big